Okay, folks, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. We have seen the agenda for a couple of days. We need a motion on the agenda. Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Tower. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Agenda is approved. Question period. Are there questions from the audience?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. One of them has to do with the drainage on the railroad. Has anything been done over the summer while it was good and dry to find out what was obstructing the drainage there at the end of Crescent Street?
Okay. Public Works, we'll take that. That's the culvert at the under the railway at Crescent Street.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that you had asked me this question one other time, and at that time I had indicated that no, there wasn't, because the plan was to put new pipes under Crescent Street, under the railroad track at Crescent Street, and that is the case with the new tender that's currently out.
Well, the railroad, from what I got out of the tender, you're going to fill the railroad's culvert in with concrete. And that is what they have in place that is draining. I don't think we should be fooling with the railroad's drainage. It's their liability, not ours.
Mr. Atkin?
Your Worship, they are filling that in because right beside that they're putting two new twin 1050 millimeter culvert pipe underneath the railroad track.
Well, I could see that. I read it in the tender package of what they were putting in. But why are we bothering with filling in their drainage so that if anything happens down the road, it's not their pipes anymore? And they do have to maintain their drainage on the right-of-way. They can't flood us out above it.
Because it's our project, so we're putting two new ones in, and typically it's normal to grout in the old pipes so that they won't collapse in the future and cause further problems, which would come back to likely the town's problem created this. So they'll be grouted, the old pipe will be grouted in, and the two new pipes installed next to it.
But the old pipe is concrete.
We don't want to get into the debate of the merits of it.
It still can fail and collapse, and it's normal to grout that in.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't see why we're getting into that when you said last year that drainage wouldn't work, and now all of a sudden it will. Another question I have, we're going to fill in two ditches that we just dug. How much water do those two ditches hold compared to what our new pond is going to hold?
Well, I'll start with that.
Yeah.
The new pond will hold about 40,000 cubic meters of water. Yeah. And the drainage ditches that you're talking about in terms of beyond the other side of the culvert, on the other side of the railway, is that what you're talking about?
On the side of the railway and up St. James Street. We're going to fill those two ditches in that act as a pond now.
No, I don't think that's it. I'm missing something in your question then.
Well, in the tender package, there it shows that you're filling the ditches in on St. James Street, and the ditch back of Bub's alongside the railroad, we're going to fill them in, and we're going to dig a pond. And the thing is, the pond isn't going to hold any more water than those two ditches did, and we're going to spend $3 million.
No, what we'll have to get into some of that detail differently, but I think the pond will hold 40,000 cubic meters of water. Yeah. That's what the design is for. Yeah. And the potential of even a 1 in 50 flood from that area is almost 3 times that could come within a 24-hour period into that area. So there is a scientific basis of why there's a need for a pond. So we can't even, on a 40,000 cubic meters, meet a third of that demand. So why we talk about this as being a transitory solution, going out the other way, is because we'd originally aimed to try to catch where we could get a 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 freshwater cycle out quickly and rapidly out another direction. What we're doing now is all that we could afford to do with that, with the money that was left. So it's not going to solve all of the problems, but the other route probably would have solved the majority of them. So there's two things going on here, and we're jumping between one and the other, and we're in that budgetary situation where we don't have much choice. So what's the best thing we can do right now appears to be something that will probably have a higher probability of flooding lower part of Sackville in the future.
What I can't understand is we dug these 2 ditches that have worked well and taken care of the flooding. Like, we had 4 inches of rain here a month or so ago, and we had flooding down at Carter's Brook, but there was no flooding in town. And like, the thing that I look at is when you do some maintenance on your ditches, it does help the water get away. But when the water come out of the pipes there at the Legion from the quarry, it had to come up 22 inches before it could start running away. That's how big a dam we had ahead of it before. And you wondered why we kept flooding downtown. Well, when the water has to come out and go uphill, it makes quite a little difference when it can run away. And we have the same problem with the railroad, with their culverts that are collapsing on both ends because they put steel pipes in them. But nobody checked this out in the summertime while it was dry to see what was there. We just hire consultants to tell us what to do. And I mean, the thing is, we hired engineers to do some future planning for the town. This is what it was for. And the only future planning that I can see that they're doing is catch-up. They don't, like, this should have been looked at.
Well, you're getting into an opinion now, Keith.
Well,
So
okay.
In terms of a question.
Okay, all right, then the next question. We're gonna put a walkway out by the lagoon with this tender?
I haven't seen the tender.
We're gonna put a walking trail alongside of the lagoon that we're gonna put an aeration plant in. That's to spend some more of this money that, to say we're using it, like, I don't think it's using our money very wisely.
But as far as I'm hearing is, no, there is no walking trail as part of that design.
That's in the plan.
And service road is what we're hearing. Right.
Oh, it shows the walking trail, but anyway, okay. Well, we've spent $500,000 in total on Lawrence Street for the Phase 2 development, basically, to get rid of our water. And it's the same thing that we suggested 18 months ago. That wasn't doable at all,
Right.
according to your...
And I just answered that, though. The problem was that the water modeling shows 160,000 cubic meters of water can come down. Well, actually, I think it's more than that, in a 24-hour period under existing rainfalls that are measured in this area. And that amount of water would flood Lawrence Street significantly. When we looked at going out that way, it wouldn't take that capacity. That abattoir wouldn't take it. The abattoir wouldn't be reconstructed by the province. The ditches were too flat, would require Lawrence Street to flood in order to get the water to go out that way. So the alternative, which we had looked at, which you guys didn't like, was the other route, in which we could manage most of that water in a 24-hour period, and we could get it out into the marsh. But the cost came in too high, and we don't have that option at this point. We're still looking for that option, but that option would have taken the risk of flooding the Lawrence Street area to a very minimal amount. The one going this way doesn't do that. And we know we're still putting the lower part of the town in flooding danger and at flooding risk. So that's the difference between the two. The other one would have really lowered that rate significantly. This one will not.
Well, the thing is, how many times have we had a major flood on Lawrence Street? Like anything like the 1961 or 62 flood?
Yeah.
How many times have we had it since then?
I don't know. regularly flooded. You saw it yourself, it floods on a regular basis, so.
Yes, but that was because we built ball fields where it used to raise the water level, and we filled them in and made ball fields out of them. But the thing is, we've had 4 inches of rain, and we've had no water on even Lawrence Street. And the bottleneck at the railroad, when it's over 1.5 feet lower on the other side of the railroad than it is on this side because it can't get through the railroad, that's where your bottleneck is. And I do agree with putting the 2 big pipes through the railroad to do it, because once the water can get out there to the other side, there's room for it to flood.
All right, so this is question period, and I think I've answered most of your questions. We're now getting into kind of a public presentation. There will be a public presentation by,
After the tender's gone.
when the tender is done, there will be a public consultation about where this is standing and why we're at this level and why we're taking this route. So you have an opportunity to express your opinions then.
Well, that's the biggest problem is, we were supposed to have this before the tender went out, and then all of a sudden, there's a big rush to get the tender out or something, and this is what we were told at the meeting here, that they would be a consultation before anything went out, and the next thing the tender's out, oh, well, we'll have that after. And every time you're playing catch-up, it costs us as taxpayers money.
All right, are there any other questions? Got a question, yes.
No, I'm wondering what you decided about me talking to the engineer outside. I know
so-
your deputy mayor and your other gentleman here had me in to question me. They questioned Mr. Best. And I'd like to know who said that I was asking for information from the engineer. You were sitting in here, you didn't hear it, so you had to get it from somebody.
How did I say that?
Well, you said that when Mr. Burke went out there, he said I wasn't able to talk to those people. And then said that.
I don't recall ever saying that you were seeking that. I don't know where I've ever said that. I don't know why you're saying I said that. So your question is, where is that process at this point? I have to ask.
Right now, I just want to tell you, I don't want an apology because it wouldn't mean a thing to him.
I think we're in the middle of this process. I don't think you need to exacerbate what's happened. Your question is where it's at, and I'm going to defer the deputy mayor to reply to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to apologize, Merlin. We've been slow about getting this all finished. We were looking over we talked to 4 different people, and we were looking over what people had said and trying to decide. And Phil and I have had a bit of trouble getting together with schedules and so on. So what we'd like you to do is come in, I think, sometime this week.
Can I bring somebody with me? When I came the last time, I didn't know I was going to end up with two people talking to me.
I've got no problem with that.
The other thing was that in one of those meetings, about, with this all blowing up, we're told that any questions that we have about the contract had to go through Mr. Burke and Mr. Acton. On November the 10th, 2016, before you even started Lawrence Street, I come in to see Mr. Acton. November the 10th, he took off because it was a long weekend with the Remembrance Day weekend. And I left both telephone numbers, and my phones record any number that comes in, and I never got a call. 2 weeks later, I come back in again, and the girl called, and Mr. Acton was at the town shed, and he said if I wanted to go out there, this was at 11:30 in the morning, he had an appointment in 15 minutes. He'd be able to talk to me for 5 minutes. I was walking, so there was no way I could get out to talk to him. So I told the girl I wanted to talk to him. before this thing started on Lawrence Street, because I was out there when the flood was on. And I know that the railway wouldn't do anything until the water got deep enough the train couldn't get through. The council was fighting with the railway to do something about these culverts that Mr. Carter was talking about.
Mr. Esbrooks, I have to ask you, what's your question of council? You're describing
Well,
something.
All right, why haven't I got a call back? I come back to see Mr. Acton 2 weeks later, and I left my phone numbers again, and I still haven't got a phone call. That's 2 years ago. And the girl made out a memo, and she called him on the phone. So if we're gonna ask any questions, we have to go through Mr. Acton or Mr. Burt. How are we gonna do it? If I wait 2 years, that, it's like I told you before when I talked to you, out on the street, that if they cleaned out their ditches and got the railway to clean their ditches, you wouldn't have to worry about everything, as long as they fix that abato down on Carter's Brook.
So in terms of your question, if you don't get a reply from staff, you should feel free to call the CAO directly or one of the councillors to pursue your questions, just in case that does occur to you again. So thanks for raising the question. Are there any other questions? Okay, we shall move on to disclosure of interest. All of you have had the topics for some period of time. Deputy Mayor Aiken?
Yes, Your Worship, I'll be recusing myself for the vote on the BIA levy.
Sorry, on the,
BIA levy.
okay. Thank you. Any other disclosures to make? No? We'll go through the minutes on page 3, regular council meeting of October the 9th. Councillor Evans moves acceptance, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting of October 22nd on page 10. Moved acceptance by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Butcher. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting November the 5th. Councillor Evans moves adoption. Deputy Mayor Aiken seconds it. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And closed in camera, November 5th on page 15. Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Evans. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. I have no business arising from the minutes. No one else? Southeast Regional Services, Deputy Mayor will speak to most of that. However, I will speak that I did attend a special meeting of the Strategic Committee as well as the executive of the board, and we spoke about the strategic priorities over the next year of what the Strategic Committee should be doing, and ended up with what will be tabled at the next meeting of looking at 3 projects, but with the context being trying to inventory and illustrate what the present context, operating context is of certain elements in the region. So in the past, you recall, we had a concern that there would be models of regionalization being pursued, and what this conversation got us back to was, let's describe the state of the operations that are there so that we fully understand what the state of the art is in policing and in sewer and water. And third one, skipping my head at the moment here, the way in which LSDs could move into a governance structure. What are the ways in which they might move into? So There will be 3 motions brought forward at the next meeting to an inventory, in essence, what are the policing agreements and arrangements and how do they work in the region? What is the way in which sewer and water is managed? What are the challenges of sewer and water management now? We had a very interesting discussion on some towns that do not have adequate water supply, not alone LSDs, but also the role that blue-green algae is playing in some supplies in some areas. So there's some real challenges coming through that we want to document and see whether there's what those potential actions would be. And on the last of what is the extent of areas that do not have a local government form of some type, and what are some of the options and what are some of the barriers to some of those options in some of those areas, and what are some of the networks that emanate out from some of the municipalities, such as our emergency responses and services like that, that are actually in the LSDs already, but they don't participate in the governance of them. So that will be 3 motions that will come up at the next board meeting, and I wanted to update you guys on that because we had, in essence, asked them not to pursue earlier with motions about regional policing and regional sewer and water commissions, et cetera. So we appear to have, I think, influenced the state of where it's at. So any questions on those? Well,
When will that meeting be?
next 2 Tuesdays. 2 Tuesdays away. Deputy Mayor, you want to speak about the meeting you attended?
Thank you, Worship. I attended the meeting the last Tuesday of last month. The meeting started out with a presentation from Emmanuel Machado, who is the CAO of Gibbons, BC. Gibbons was a town featured in the Beachcombers TV series, on Municipal Natural Assets Initiative. This is something we heard about a year ago here. And what they've done is tried to include the services to their town that's provided by nature in compiling their municipal assets. And their ideas, like things like water they get from their aquifer, water they get from runoff off the mountains, stormwater storage, all these things that they can do sort of naturally and don't have to build structures to do them, they saw as a benefit. The problem he illustrated with this, the value of natural assets, is very difficult to determine. But he said they have in their town one large park and a pond in the middle of the town, and they estimated they got $3 million in service from that, of other things they didn't have to build to do what the ponds were doing. Again, it was of some interest, but determining this accurately, it would be very, very difficult. And that initiative, I believe, is being started down here in the near future. I don't know where, but somewhere down in this region. Other actions, we approved a capital budget of $8.4 million, which is almost all for the solid waste facility. 6.8 of that will be borrowed, which sounds like a large number, but it's still, the debt load is still under 12% for the region, so it's well within provincial guidelines. Provincial allows, I think, a maximum of 20%. I believe it was 2016, I wasn't involved at the time, but they set up a fund to look at a regional approach to dealing with unsightly premises, and the fund got to $170,000. It was a volunteer, non-binding contribution by various communities. And they just, the impression I got was the region was kind of blindsided because the province said they were going to take over all the dealings with unsightly premises, which rendered the regional initiative null and void. So $170,000 plus interest was returned to the municipalities that kicked in the first place. And we didn't kick in, so we got nothing back. And finally, the Eco 360 gave their report. So far this year, the energy that they've captured from the methane and producing electricity from that, they say is the equivalent of taking 10,000 cars off the road or burning 52 million pounds of coal. So there's been a real benefit to that program. And the next step they're going to take, which accounts for some of the capital budget, is to take the heat generated by the generators that are providing this electricity, use that to heat the buildings. So they're taking the next step. So it's becoming a very efficient operation that way. And that was pretty much the meeting.
Any questions on the meeting for Deputy Mayor? Okay, thank you. Thanks for attending. So we will then move to planning. Ms. Bickford.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the month of October, 6 permits were issued. This brings our year-to-date total at 62 permits for a total construction value of $23 million. Compared to last year, there was 42 permits at a construction value of $12 million. So this year, we've seen a lot of institutional, industrial, and commercial activity that was absent from last year's activity. The Planning Review and Adjustment Committee did not deal with any development requests that required their approval for Sackvill during the month of October. However, I would like to mention that at the board meeting, they have filled the vacancy for the Planning Review Committee, and it is a Sackvill resident, Alexander Claremont, will be filling that position to round out our committee to a full membership. Other projects that were worked on was there's a number of development inquiries that are still coming in, which is not typical for this time of year, but which is still a good sign of things that could be coming up in the future. We've also attended the Atlantic Planners Institute conference, which covered a lot of range of topics ranging from healthy communities to development officer training opportunities. And I did have the opportunity to co-present with the planner in Moncton for a Planning Review and Adjustment Committee and Planning Advisory Committee session on the role that those two committees play and what is expected of them and the decisions that they take. So if there's any questions.
Councillor Evans, please.
Segue into my question. The Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, this body can make decisions which affect us, and yet we do not have any control over the people. So could you review for my benefit the process by which vacancies are filled? People are appointed to this group.
So the committee is the board's committee, so it's a subcommittee of them that they've created. There is a 9-member committee, and we do seek geographical representation so that we have representation from all areas that are covered by the Southeast. As part of that process, when there is a vacancy, we do request a resume to be submitted by individuals who are interested. And in that, we're also seeking not only diversity of geographic location, but also backgrounds that they bring to the table as well. So on the committee now, we have people who range from past employment as assessors, business people. This particular individual is an architect. So we're always seeking that broad representation. It has to go before the big board of the Southeast Regional Service Commission, and they take the decision as to whether the person fulfills the need.
So it's the Regional Service Commission who appoints them.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Tower, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Laurie, because the word's all over town, people's talking, and because they know action's happening for Burger King coming into town, and it is going to be at the old Wendy's building, I presume, because there's no other place they're allowed to. Could you give the background why they can, without going through any plans, just go ahead and move into this place?
Sure. When the Exit 506 area was developed, all the development that occurred up there was through a development agreement process. So that's
504.
Oh, sorry, 504. At that time, drive-throughs were permitted in the town, and each development, so Irving, McDonald's, and Wendy's, and Tim Hortons, which were our original developments, entered into a development agreement with the town to develop particular proposals, and that's how the process had happened. As a result, a development agreement stays with the property and is embedded within that certain things that are permitted to occur. So they have a right to operate a drive-through at those two locations, which is the McDonald's one, as well as the Tim Hortons locations, until such time that that development agreement is no longer binding on the property. But at this time, all terms and conditions have been met. So that's why in that particular case, they would be permitted.
Thank you for that. Are they allowed to make changes as in a second lane or pathway for that?
So anything that would deviate from those original negotiated development agreements does trigger a public process to come back through. At that point, council, it would be presented back to council as to whether council was interested in amending that agreement. And if council wanted to entertain the idea, they would have to hold a public hearing. But if they continue to operate as is, they're operating under the existing agreement, and that's okay.
Any other questions on that? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tower. That was there's often people use the word that drive-throughs were banned. We tried to make sure that people understood that it was actually the planning rules. It's the development agreements and the highway commercial zone that were being discussed last time. So this is what we were talking about all that time along, was there was a right to a drive-through at a certain place at a certain, under certain conditions already there. So it wasn't a ban that per se, as some people have called it. So thanks for clarifying that. And any other questions for planning report? Nope. Okay, we'll move to reports, and that'll start with the mayor's, and a shorter one, as I was out of town quite a bit in the last one, but media interviews on the Terra Beata development. Apparently people coming across the marsh notice it quite well and have raised it multiple times, so I had a brief discussion with the transcript on that. Also with the Abido reconstruction down on the highway, they called on that as well. And the local paper wanted to speak about the by-election. So those were the media events. Other events in town, of course, First Responders Supper for the Legion puts on once a year to thank those who respond on an emergency basis, and the timing was pretty good. Matter of fact, the people I was sitting with got called out during the meal, and they did not get a meal. So it just shows how much time of their life is spent on these sorts of things. There were Remembrance Day events, which most of you were at, that we all pretty well all attended. And I would note that I was in attendance in the rain at the Tantramars' 4th win in a row of the football championships for the province. We did write a letter to the New Brunswick deputy ministers about flooding and the projects that we were involved in. We've had multiple exchanges through my office with the MP on projects and infrastructure funds and the potential for other infrastructure funds. As part of a larger meeting I attended, that the CEO of the Horizon Health met with several of the mayors of the region to just get the feel of where the communities were at with some of the services that they provide. Did meet with some of the movers of the Sackvill 2020, and because there was an active process with the DEC looking at what the future of at least one of the schools is, I wanted to know where they were at, and they are prepared to actually present to the DEC next week, and make their presentation about what an option would be for the DEC, the District Education Council, to consider. On other matters, I met both an ADM of Education and a Anglophone South District Superintendent in Education on other matters, and both of them specifically asked about Sackville Schools 2020, and both of them were trying to create models both within the province and within the Anglophone South similar to Sackville Schools 2020, and we're hopeful that some type of a push could be made. And they were hoping that we would lead the way so that they could follow in with this. And I was asking them if they would lead, we could also follow. So very interesting to see where the support is within the education profession about what's being talked about here. Lots of people calling in about emergency response, flood mitigation questions and ideas. Some feedback from DTI after my conversation with the Deputy Minister. They are in the midst, although I don't know if they have written it, they wanted to write to the railway about the culvert issues across the province, not just here, but because of our raising it, they were putting pen to paper. I don't know that we'll get copied on it, but they are looking at trying to move the railway to take better care of the culverts. Senator Olson indicated some interest in our concerns about new infrastructure terms and conditions that we raised last time as part of the UMNB report, that there would be two different conditions attached to infrastructure that would make it very difficult for smaller places to actually be able to take the risk to apply. So she is interested in following up on that. Also met the MLA, and she seemed to know a lot about the town, but I gave her several of the suggestions of what the town would like to see pursued as priorities, and hopefully that something can come out of that. And also have had multiple discussions recently about potential for businesses in this area. Not a lot of specifics, but a lot of interest, specific interest about coming here and looking at, I'm not sure why, but there seems to be a lot more inquiries coming to me, and maybe the data shows that something's going on, but that's a positive, I think. So that's it from my short report this month. Any questions? Councillor Evans.
Bang the table to get the attention. I just wanted to follow up on one of the things you mentioned. I too was there in the rain to watch the football game as we had a four-peat. We'll have to keep up making up new words as they keep playing well. And though it was rainy and uncomfortable if you weren't dressed appropriately, the playing conditions were excellent because they didn't play on a grass field. They played on alumni field on campus. So that was a nice partnership or arrangement. I don't know the details of the arrangement, but it really was a real benefit, and so that the game was able to be decided on the field in good conditions for everyone. So I think that's a nice, again, I don't know the details of the relation, but it looks to me like a town-gown partnership, which I think is great.
Yep, and that was changed because it was scheduled for the high school, right, and they changed it in the last 24 hours because of that impending storm. So the flexibility between the two was really good, and it seemed to help one team anyway. Any other questions on the mayor's report? No? Okay, thank you very much. CAO's report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report's in the package, and I'll just highlight a couple of points because all the details in terms of what the departments are working on are within their respective reports, and I tend to steal a little bit of their thunder at this point, but I'll try not to take too much away. But I just wanted to make reference to the past month where we did have a couple of somewhat emergency calls where the emergency services members were very active, fire, police, and even the emergency management team as well, with the gas line break as well as the weather event in terms of closures of highways. And while I felt that our staff and resources responded very well and positive, one of the concerns that was tabled as we spoke about it later is the lack or slowness of information that comes to the town in terms of being able to put information out on assets that are not the town's property, like the highways. And it's frustrating for us, and I know by extension to the residents it's frustrating for residents because we tend to get the calls first. And it's frustrating on our end when we don't have the information to know exactly just whether a road will be closed, when it'll open, when they're going to do this or when they're going to do that. So we try and put information out as quickly as we can in social media, but we have to make sure that what we're putting out is accurate and we're not speaking on behalf of another party such as the government or NB Power, et cetera. So a couple of years ago, we actually spearheaded the working of a protocols group amongst the different jurisdictions of Nova Scotia, the DTIs of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, as well as the emergency management, and it went very well. And we had people around the table, And we did have a few events, and it seemed to work well. People have come and gone a little bit and changed, and it appears that that may be something we need to try and reestablish again. And I know the chief has already reached out to some of his contacts to see if we can pull people back to the table. While the black and white is there in terms of what each of us could do, should do, the will of the partners at the table may have changed, and or maybe it doesn't, you know, just a change in players as perhaps some people are not as aware as their predecessors were. So there's discussion on Lawrence Street. Obviously, the project's back out to tender, and so pleased to see that our staff are working with the engineers and looking to address that. And as has been noted, there will be an information session on that as once the tender closes and we have more information in terms of where and what the next step's going to be. Departments, particularly Public Works and Facilities, are still busy trying to finish up on fall projects before winter comes in. So I don't know how the afternoon went, but I expect there's still some work to do. Obviously, some projects are going to be less critical in terms of the timing and the weather than others, and some are of concern at this point in terms of where we will be in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, or even by, you know, into the winter. And we're hoping that the contractors that have some of the bigger projects are going to make some huge strides here in the next few weeks, and we hope the weather cooperates with us. Budget is well underway, as most everybody knows, and we've had a public meeting on the budget to receive input from residents and resident organizations. And next week we commence the presentation publicly to council of our first draft. So we look forward to that process and your participation in helping us get finalized budget in place, hopefully by December, similar to past years. And as you know, we still wait for the province to give us our final numbers before we know what our revenue is in terms of the tax assessment levels. As the mayor's made reference to planning in terms of some impressive data there, it's very encouraging and good to see the fact that we've got the number of development permits that we do, and twice as much in development, with over $24 million approximately to date. So that's very encouraging, and for good reason. We're also proceeding and working with the community on a business development strategy as well, that we're hoping to bring back to council or again here in the next few months, and probably look to have something more early in the new year. Also had an interesting presentation. Well, it was interesting, or somewhat different for me to be back into a classroom in the university, but I enjoyed working with the fourth-year business student at Mount Allison in terms of a project that they have underway, and in terms of they're looking to follow up with the managers in terms of how we do our business and carry out our operations on a day-to-day basis. And so we're looking forward to that as a management group in the next few weeks, and we have a presentation from the class back to us later in the month. And I guess finally I just remind folks, and I'm sure it'll be reminded later by the departments, but we have the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony on December 7th, and the parade of lights following on the following day on December 8th. So with that, that's my report, Your Worship. If there's any questions, I'd do my best to address them.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions, but I will make a comment, I think, on the multiple events that we've gone through. I think there's a lot of people that were asking questions from the public about where do we go for information, what should be our expectations, and some of them were expectations that the town would do something in areas that they have no jurisdiction on. I think there's some confusion over what role the town plays with the highway, and whether it's on, it's closed, or who does what. And frankly, in my meeting with the MLA, it was her biggest topic that week, that she was getting inundated with calls about who's in charge here, what kind of services do we get in Westcock and other areas. So I think it would be useful to have that kind of public conversation. You say it every month, 72 hours, be prepared to be ready for that as the first step. And I guess in this case, we had a variety of scenarios over a short period of time that maybe tested some of the other responses of agencies. So my own view is I think we should have that opportunity and let the public have an opportunity to speak. And the MLA may be offering that opportunity herself. So it might be worthwhile to contact her and see if she is actually setting up a session. And if so, maybe we could participate in that and do a bit of a post response look. Councillor Finney?
Yes, I was just wondering, to the CAO, the report that is being made by the business class, is that they're going to be bringing it back to staff, or will it be presented to council as well, or?
It's an in-class presentation that they will be doing during their class hours that they'll be presenting to the management team. Those that participate in that. I expect we won't have all of the management team there. They're looking to follow up with several members depending on the area of interest that they're pursuing, and I expect it to be more in and around the services and programs that perhaps the students are more active in and or what they see on our website in terms of marketing and promoting of our town.
Will council members be able to get a copy of that that project or whatever? I'd love to read it myself to see where they're coming from.
I don't know what the content will be in terms of how they present it, whether it's a PowerPoint, whatever, but anything that they have, will certainly make that request and look to provide it back to council.
That's Rosemary Polidato's class.
No.
No.
Sandy McIvers.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the CAO's report? No, thank you very much. To Finance and Admin. Councillor Tower?
I'll do part one, Your Worship, and we'll tag team it as usual. It's the bills and payroll, and that's on page 19 and 20. And before I make the motion that's coming, I'll ask the Treasurer if he'd like to speak on a couple.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. On page 19, the accounts payable report, the large invoices paid for the month, those over 10,000, were for general government. The RCMP bill for the period April to June was the largest bill. That was at 308,000. We've purchased salt preparation for the winter. As well, we paid patching invoice and a lot of bills from NB Power, as we do every month. In utility government, we had our payment to Veolia as well as power bills for the larger bills for that. And in general capital, the projects that had bills paid for that for the month of October were the King Street culvert replacement, Lawrence Street, air packs with the fire department, and for Main Street as well. There were no invoice and bills paid in utility capital for the month of October, but the Main Street project is included with general capital, and then a transfer is done back to utility capital. So there were some expenses that were undertaken. It's just we only cut one check and then do the transfer back to the utility capital. On page 20 is the payroll for pay periods for the month of October. Included there is the overtime breakdown as well. If anybody has any questions, I can answer them.
Councillor Butcher?
Thank you. I was just hoping you could clarify for me, for the Civic Center, there's overtime for us to line the TRHS field. Is that something we always do?
Yeah, that's within our working agreement with the school district. We line the fields, and we pay a certain small fee on an annual basis as well, $6,000 a year, and that gives us the ability to use their fields and gymnasiums and everything. So we do look after the lining of their field.
Okay. Councillor Tower?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council accept the bills and payroll for the month of October 2018 as follows. General government, $666,231.15. General capital, $492,781.25. Utility government, $47,837.44. Utility capital, nothing. And salaries, $208,166.06.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Black. Question?
Question.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Deputy Mayor Aiken, second half of the,
Thank you, Worship. The financial reports appear on pages 21 through 26 in the package. The financial statements are included to the end of October of this year. With 2 months remaining in the year, we are on target with our general utility and utility operating budgets. And as in the past, we're coming into December meeting of council. We'll review numbers more closely to determine our overall financial position for the fiscal year 2018, which will allow us to determine what we need to take out of or put into reserve funds for this fiscal year. And in accordance with the budget, we'll be putting a minimum of $80,000 into the utility capital reserve to continue to plan for the future lagoon upgrades. The 2019 budget process began on October 22nd, 2018 with public presentations. There are many groups that were presented, I believe about 10, for requests for 2019, and the first draft of the operating budgets will be presented on November 19th and 20th. Also at the November 19th budget meeting, we'll be having Gabe Metron from Public Sector Digest here to talk about the asset management plan and present an executive summary of it. It was completed in October, and once presented to council, we'll be asked to accept the plan as a guideline for future capital planning. And you're all aware that we just received from Michael the full asset management plan. It's fascinating reading. We've submitted all funding requirements and plans relating to the FCM for our asset management plan for the full claim amount of $48,000. And if we haven't received them already, we'll be receiving them sometime this month. We continue to monitor the collection of water and sewer shut-off letters that were sent out on July 20th of this year. Of the 131 accounts that had total outstanding balance of $96,081.17, we have collected $78,581.54, or almost 82%, and we'll continue to monitor that. No accounts will be discontinued at this time. And on the bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics for October are attached on pages 27 and 28, respectively. And finally, we'd like to welcome Corey Springer to the town as our new bylaw enforcement officer, effective October 29th, 2018, and offer great thanks to Brooke Wilson for her work during the transition and hiring period. And that's the report, Your Worship, and there are no motions.
any questions on the report? Okay. Deputy Mayor, you have a motion? No? All right. Through to, hearing no questions, we move to item D, Tourism and Business Development. And that is Councillor O'Neill, please.
The tourism report's on page 29 in the package. Visitor parties at the Tourist Bureau had 397 people, which our parties are consistent with the same number about as last year. The department held 2 strategic plan meetings, October the 12th and 16th. There was good discussions, and updated tourist plan will be completed once the new business development strategy is finalized. Startup Sackvill had an office hours event on October the 16th at the Sackvill Commons. There was a small turnout, but we also received there was useful discussion among the participants. The manager attended a Cultural Coast meeting in October, and from that meeting and consultation with the managers, we've decided to take a hiatus from the Cultural Coast in 2019. And we'll wait and see what happens, how things develop from that. The department continues to work on our sign capital project with new signage planned to be upgraded in different areas of our town. A small committee continues to work on the VIC displayed renewal project. It's progressing well, and they anticipate it to be finished in the early 2019s. As part of the development of the town's new business development strategy, the consultant was in Sackville on Monday, October the 29th, for a series of meetings, including a public meeting in the evening. The day went well, and there were 12 people in the public meeting where a good sharing of ideas took place. That's the report, and Your Worship, and I have a motion to make.
Any questions on the report before the motion? No? Please go ahead.
I move that council approve the quote from Hanson Signs for $6,935.60 plus HST for the fabrication of the poetry on pole signs, wayfind signs around town, exterior welcome sign at the Civic Center, and wayfind signs including trail names in the Waterfowl Park, and also the installation of the wayfind signs around town and the exterior welcome sign at the Civic Center.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill. Seconded by Councillor Tower. Comments? Question? Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item E, public property and facilities. Councillor Tower, is that you?
Yes, it is, Your Worship. Thank you. The information is on pages 31 to 33. The patching contractor, McDonald Paving and Contracting, were back in town during the month of October and completed as much remaining road cuts and patching as possible on the allocated budget. Public Works Department have completed the sewer water on main extension from Bridge Street to Robson Avenue, along with the required service road. The Utility Department worked on the annual maintenance of the several lift stations throughout the month of October, and the fire hydrants have been drained around the town already, and those are not all the fire hydrants, it's only the ones we have in town that are continually holding water, and so the plug is out and then drained, so we have no freezing going on. Public Works completed some sidewalk renewal throughout the month of October due to the weather. We will be likely unable to complete any more this year. Public Works staff have started to work on the new Dufferin Street Sports Field utility shed, and the concrete pad has been poured. And if you can give a little bit of background on that one, if either Dwayne or Todd, on how that project's going with local help.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. Yes, as indicated in the report, we were able to last week get the concrete, actually the underground plumbing was put in by, we hired a couple of local trades to do the plumbing, and the electrical needed to be run before the slab was put in. That was done. The slab has been poured. They stripped the forms today and backfilled around the slab, and we've got another subcontractor who's going to come in and quickly stick frame it for us to get it up, get it roofed, weather tight, and then Public Works staff will continue to work away at it as time and weather permits throughout the rest of fall, winter, and even throughout the winter again when time permits and the conditions permit.
Very good. Thank you, Dwayne. Main Street reconstruction project has faced a number of weather delays, as we all know. We're still optimistic that some of the weather will back off a bit in the next several weeks and allow to be able to complete the project by the end of November, weather dependent. And it's noted that the section on Main Street continues to be closed to through traffic as well as for pedestrian traffic during the duration of the project. Engineering Department continue to work with Crandall Engineering on the design of the Lawrence Street reconstruction and stormwater mitigation project, as our CAO touched on, with the tender being issued already, and there will be a future meeting to deal with it once we get the results back. The Engineering Department issued tender number 2018-0 13 garbage collection and disposal services during the month of October. The existing contract with Miller Waste expires at the end of the year and a new contract is required. A motion will be coming forward tonight. Staff continue to be in touch with DTI regarding the replacement of the Carter Brook Culvert Abido project on 935. At the Tanamar Veteran Memorial Civic Center, the month of October is a busy one at the center with the skate club starting up the season. The minor hockey picked their provincial teams and started playing games. Mount Allison women's hockey has had a couple of home games and are putting on a good show. The Gent Leagues are all up and running, as well as the Mount Allison intramural that has started after Thanksgiving. Congratulations to the Titan girls for their first tournament gold medal on November 4th, and their home game, the first one was on November 10th at 4:30, and so we want people to keep an eye on the schedules and get out and cheer on the girls for sure. The boys will hosted their first home game on November 9th at 6:30, and they look like they're going to be doing the best they can to defend their provincial championship. The municipal park, the trail work on Lund property. Dwayne, can I get you to fill in on that one, please?
Thank you, Councillor Tower. So with the Lund property, what was proposed for this phase, I guess, was to construct a trail through what we call the Lund Way, I believe it was, or through there. So the trail has been built all the way over to where the monument's going to go. The base for the monument is been constructed. The rock for the monument has been acquired and is out on site and just needs to be placed in place. And then once that's done, we have a contractor who's going to do the engraving on it. There'll be a little bit of work, obviously, next spring, some touch-up work, but for the most part, most of the trail work from Squire Street out to the monument is complete.
And when it comes to the bridges that are being built, we have one already done, and the second one should be within a couple weeks.
That's in the Waterfowl Park itself, over near, I guess, CWS or off Waterfowl Lane. One of the bridges is complete, and the contractor is going to be completing the next one in the next couple weeks. So there might be some disruption to some pedestrian traffic through that section of the trail. But again, much needed repairs to those bridges.
Excellent, thank you, Dwayne. That's the end of my report and Dwayne's report, same time. So I have motions if there's no questions.
Questions on the report? Okay, Councilor Tower?
Okay. I move that council approve the tender submission by Miller Waste Systems, Inc., tender number 2018-13, garbage collection and disposal services, and agrees to enter into a 5-year contract as a tender beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2023 at a cost of Part A, $87.29 per unit, HST included. 1B, $14.29 per unit, HST included. 1C, $1.18 per unit, HST included. And 1D, $8,365.28 HST included, lump sum, and authorize the mayor and council to sign and seal the contract.
Mayor and clerk.
Oh, sorry, Mayor. My apologies.
Moved by Councilor Tower, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Can we have some background from Michael on the differences?
Let's have a question first from Councilor Evans.
No,
'cause
I'm happy to have.
we did have a pretty intensive discussion. Is there? Go ahead with your question first.
Okay. I'm going to be voting in favor of the motion, but I do have some concerns, and I would just like to speak about them. And I want to, first of all, acknowledge that at our discussion meeting, I had some questions which the town engineer replied or answered fully. And that's what's convinced me to vote in favor of the motion, even though I don't think it goes as far as I would like. The reason we separate our garbage is because we are trying to minimize the negative effect that it has on the environment. The more that we sort, actually, ideally, the more we reduce our garbage, the better it is. But if we are going to throw stuff out, if we can divert it, reuse it, recycle it, that minimizes the amount that has to go into these cells which get buried, which are hugely expensive to build. So when we don't separate our garbage, it all goes in the landfill, and that's a very expensive way to do it in dollar terms. It's a very expensive way to do it in terms of the negative effect on the environment. In the town now, all residential dwellings have the garbage picked up by the town. We contract that out, and it gets delivered to the Solid Waste Commission, and we pay to have it disposed of. Residential residential dwellings of greater than 4 units are not covered by this. And so this goes to my concern about fairness. Everybody in town pays property tax, including businesses, but only the residences get their garbage picked up. So my concern about people who are living in residence or running businesses, they're paying tax and yet they're not getting garbage delivery. So the fairness thing is separate from the cost. The fact that these people have to pay for their own garbage, they tend to do it the cheapest way, which is unsorted. So I understand why they're doing it. I'm not mad at them. And in fact, if we all paid for that out of our tax dollars, they would pay less individually. So the residents are getting a bit of a free ride. So I do have concerns, but I understand that this solution is going to have to be done at the regional level. And until it's mandated regionally, the way the three-stream garbage is, we're probably not going to be able to succeed. So grudgingly, I am going to do this because I think it's a step in the right direction and my concerns are being addressed at the regional level. So a long-winded way to say I'm in favor.
Any other comments? The motion is on the floor. Is there anything specific you wanted to hear from staff?
Yeah, I was just asking Michael if he can give a breakdown on what the 1A, B, and D, so people understand better.
Okay.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Tower. So 1A is our regular weekly pickup. 1B is our 2 special pickups that happen throughout the year. 1C is our Christmas tree pickup, and 1D is the pickup at the garbage at the town garage and the civic center. So basically, the town garage has picked up all the garbage cans around town is picked up there. The price that council is going to be approving today, we'll see a reduction in budget 2018 over budget 2019 of $23,600. Nearly 10% reduction in overall cost of collection year over year. So we did see very good pricing in putting this out to tender. When we present the budget 2019 next week, you will see that reduction submitted within the first draft.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Any other comments? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Tower, you have another?
Yes, Your Worship. I move that council award tender number 2018-15, the disposal of a 2002 Chev half-ton truck, serial number 1GCEC14W32Z 260053 to the highest bidder, Tim Rose, in the amount of $950, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
And my final one, I move that council authorize the closure of Ford Lane and Willow Lane on Friday, November 23rd, 2018, and Friday, December 7th, 2018, for the approximately 5 p.m. to midnight to allow the operation of the horse and wagon rides and set up the vendor tables during the 2 Moonlight Madness events.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Evans. operational matter, you've done it twice already? Yeah. Question, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. That is all I had, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Tower. We will move to recreation programs and events. Councillor Butcher, Councillor Evans?
We alternate.
Okay.
Recreation Programs and Events Liaison Group met on October 29th. And despite the wet weather, the Trailblazers program continues to be well attended and participants get picked up by their parents, wet, muddy, and happy. Fall pickleball is running at the Mount A Gym on Mondays and Fridays from 1:30 till 3 and on Wednesdays from 9:30 until 11 until December. Annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony will be held at the Bill Johnstone Memorial Park on December 7th in conjunction with the second date of the Moonlight Madness. The event will begin with Christmas carols at 5:30 and a planned visit from Santa, arrival 6 p.m. We'll be offering a Christmas light bus tour on Tuesday, December 18th from 6 until 9 for only $5 a person. Please register at Town Hall during regular business hours. The public is invited to attend the annual Mayor's New Year's Levy, which will be held on January 1st, 2019, from 1 till 3 in council chambers. And work continues on the town's recreation master plan. Background information and rationale are being developed, and a draft should be completed by the end of the year. And the natural playground equipment construction is underway, and the installation should begin soon. And at the time of the writing, staff had not received a report from the library. And
Any
that's
questions
it.
on the recreation programs report? None. Thank you, Councillor Evans. We move to public safety. That is split. Oh, that's right. Councillor O'Neill, please.
Thank you. The Sackvill Fire and Rescue responded to 15 calls for service in the month of October, which included 4 commercial fire alarms, 4 motor vehicle collisions, 4 utility pole fires, 1 flue fire, 1 natural gas line break, and 1 mutual aid assistance call from Dorchester Fire Department. Total number of calls for service to date are down from the same time frame in 2017. The fire department responded to an additional 11 calls for service during the heavy rain and wind event that took place on Saturday, November the 3rd, which included in these calls was an overturned tractor trailer on the highway and 10 calls for downed power lines. The chief thanks the public works staff for all their efforts in assisting the fire department with road closure signs and barricades. Also, the department placed a fire engine on the Westcock side of Route 935 bypass to ensure fire suppression was maintained within this area, as the town was informed by the construction company that the bypass road would be closing due to flooding within the provincial construction site. Training sessions that took place during the month of October were for water shuttle, pump operations, hydrant hookups, and station and equipment checks. October was Fire Prevention Month for the province, and the Fire Prevention Committee was busy going to the elementary school and various daycare facilities to hold educational sessions on fire safety with the children. And the fire chief I know has said that the children pay so much attention to what they are told, and they know that that's all taken home to the parents. It's their best way of getting information out to the mums and dads. Sackvill Fire and Rescue held its annual steak and lobster supper. Seeing regular members, honorary members, associate members, and widows of deceased firefighters in attendance. This event is always a great opportunity for for the retired members to get to know some of our newer members around the station. The chief asked that we mark our calendars. Sackvill Fire and Rescue is holding its 6th annual Parade of Lights on Saturday, December the 8th. The parade will consist of all Sackville's emergency services, will depart from the fire station at 6:30, and the parade route will be advertised in the coming weeks in the Tribune Post. The chief continues to remind all residents to make sure that we have a basic emergency kit prepared for the last 72 which would last for 72 hours in the case of an emergency. From the RCMP, the past month, the overall number of calls for service in the detachment area has been trending down from last month, and is notably lower than it was over the same time period last year. And they feel it's likely due to an intervention for 2 likely suspects who relocated to other communities. As a result of the major gas line rupture on Main Street, the fire chief and Sergeant Gagne meet to review the response. Overall, the fire department was the lead agency, and it went relatively well, it lasted about 90 minutes. Cannabis legislation came into effect on October the 17th, as I'm sure we're all aware, and the Sergeant Gagne says to date there have been very few related issues from that. With the report from our CPO, Jean-Francois LeBlanc, he has, on the schools, he's received requests for service, 2 at Mount A, 6 from Tanimar High, 4 from Marshview Middle, and 1 from Salem. And these were just requests for service, and he also has occasional visits to meet the students and teachers. He also, through the community, he keeps the usual visits to the hospital, continues to work with Mad Canada. He also had a road rally on October the 6th, and he thanks the Tanimar High School for their assistance. He does Cops and Kids Leadership Camp. Over 50 kids from the Tanimar region attended the camp, where they learned leadership skills and also developed positive relationships with law enforcement officers. And the RCMP Auxiliary Program, they're presently looking to recruit new volunteers in the coming months. The committees that he works on is Crime Stoppers, Block Parent Program, Link Program Committee, Youth and Adult Diversion Committee, Access to Mental Health Committee at the Mount A University. He also works with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and he has Sackvill Bicycle Registration Program. And as we can see, he's one busy gentleman, and I'm sure if anybody would like to know more about these different committees and things that he does, if you would just contact our CPO LeBlanc, I'm sure he would be pleased to answer any questions, or he would like to, or if you would like more information on the work that he is doing in our community. That's my report, Your Worship.
Question? Any, Deputy Mayor, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not a question, but I just thought I'd like to offer up sort of thanks and appreciation to, since they're sitting here, Todd and Dwayne and Craig, for the work they put in, the hours of sleep they lost on the little bit of a blow we had the other weekend. I know they're out at my place very late in the evening and had a lot of other places to go to after that too. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I note in the package, perhaps you'd like to speak to the Parade of Lights. Mr.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, our annual Parade of Lights is scheduled for December the 7th, I believe. It's always been a resounding success for the community, and I know that many, many folks within our community look forward to seeing that. So our crews do an amazing job of decorating the trucks, and it becomes a bit of a competition between the companies just to see who can do the best job. So looking forward again to seeing what creative activities and ideas they've got this year.
Okay, thank you.
For children of all ages.
Absolutely.
No questions on that report. We can, thank you very much, Councillor O'Neill. Move to policy bylaw. Councillor Black, please.
Thank you. The bylaw and policy and bylaw report can be found on page 40 of the package. We held our meeting on October 18th, 2018. An update was provided with regard to bylaw number 263, a bylaw respecting Sackvill policing. Noted that this bylaw had received first reading at the October 2018 regular meeting of council. It was also noted that the advertisement of the proposed bylaw was done, and it was anticipated that second and third reading would be considered at the council meeting this evening. The clerk's office finalized a draft substance abuse policy, which was circulated to council, and department heads and staff will continue to review information and materials received over the next few months prior to the implementation of this policy. Bylaw number 264, a bylaw relating to the establishment of a special business improvement area levy in the town of Sackville, was noted at the meeting, which is an annual bylaw which is presented each year. Staff have reached out to Main Street Redevelopment requesting their budget numbers when they become available. It is anticipated that first and second reading will come forward at the November 2018 regular council meeting. The clerk's office noted that a motion was brought forward at the regular council meeting of October 9th, 2018 with regard to tall grass, but received no seconder, resulting in the motion falling to the floor. The clerk's office began creating leave forms and files for the 2019 year. The clerk's office reviewed the local governance regulation with regard to disclosure of interest and oath of office forms. The clerk's office will have disclosure of interest forms available at regular council meeting in the event of a councillor having a conflict. The clerk's office arranged for the annual flu shot clinic, which was held on Wednesday, October 30th at the Public Works Building. And I also have that's the end of the report. I also have a couple of motions this evening as well.
Okay. And hearing no questions, we want to go to your first motion?
I move that council give second reading, section by section, to bylaw number 263, a bylaw respecting the provision of municipal police services in the town of Sackville. Bylaw number 263, Town of Sackville Policing Bylaw, a bylaw respecting the provision of municipal police services in the town of Sackville. Section 1, purpose and intent. Section 2, title. Section 3, police establishment. Section 4, definitions. Section 5, management and operation of the municipal police force. Section 6, police services.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Black?
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 263, a bylaw respecting the provision of municipal police services in the town of Sackville.
Moved by Councillor Black. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Deputy Mayor Aiken, stepping outside, please let the minutes note that. So declared an interest in the next item.
I move that council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 264, a bylaw relating to the establishment of a special business improvement area levy in the town of Sackville.
Sorry, moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that council give second reading, section by section, to bylaw number 264, a bylaw relating to the establishment of a special business improvement area levy in the town of Sackville. Bylaw number 264, a bylaw relating to the establishment of a special business improvement area levy in the town of Sackville. Be it enacted by the council of the town of Sackville under the authority vested in it by the Business Improvement Areas Act, SNB 1985 C.B-10.2 as follows. 1. A special business improvement area levy in the amount of 20 cents per $100 of assessment for the year beginning January 1st, 2019, and every year thereafter is hereby imposed on all business properties within the area described in bylaw number 128, being a bylaw to designate and establish a business improvement area within boundaries of the town of Sackville. 2. Proceeds from the levy in the amount of $23,595.02 may be remitted following receipt by the town of Sackville to Main Street Redevelopment Sackville Inc. for the purposes contained in the budget submitted by Main Street Redevelopment Sackville Inc. and approved by Sackville Town Council on December 10th, 2018. And 3, upon passing of this bylaw, bylaw number 257 is hereby repealed.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Finney. Want any background? I think there are people that will tune into this that we probably should just describe the background to it. Mr. Bill, are you comfortable describing why we have to do a bylaw for this every year, please?
Yeah, the BIA is an area, for the most part, in the downtown core, and we're required to create a bylaw that sets the rate, and we do this on an annual basis. The rate of 20 cents per $100 of assessment has been in place for 20 plus years, and we do this bylaw on an annual basis, and then once we receive the final number from the province, which should come later this month before third reading, the actual dollar amount that is to be collected will be revised prior to third reading and adjusted. So it is something we have to do prior to approving this type of budget for the 2019 year.
Thank you very much. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Please get Mr. Deputy Mayor. And we will be moving to personnel. It's going to be Councillor Black for this, okay. Councillor Black, personnel, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The personnel report can be found on page 45 of the package. The following is an overview of recent activities during the past month. Council liaison meeting was held on November 8th, 2018. During the pay periods of October, there were 36 permanent employees and 2 temporary employees. Town also confirmed additional in staffing resources and finance administration to cover maternity leave period. A grievance was received and responded to regarding the call-out provisions. And that's the end of this short report.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you. We move to item J, Corporate Strategic Development. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. The report can be found on pages 46 to 48. And the Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development Liaison Group met on the 23rd of October. Some highlights of our report. Work continues on the town's new business development strategy that's being led by Lionsgate Consulting and 4L Strategies Consulting. The consultants have completed the literature review and they're now conducting an internal audit of the town's current organizational structure and approach used, as well as researching best practices. Key informant interviews are also underway. One of the consultants was in Sackvill on October 29th for a series of engagement sessions, which included Opportunities New Brunswick, the Exit 506 Group, the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce, as well as a public session from 7 till 9. A survey for local business people will be distributed in the coming weeks, and staff expect a draft strategy to be completed by the end of the year, with the consultant making a public presentation in 2019. Staff were pleased to receive an invitation to attend the Southeast Workforce Action Team, which is a regional working group that convenes partners on a monthly basis to discuss workforce issues and initiatives. Other partners include Opportunities New Brunswick, Department of Post-Secondary Education and Labor, City of Moncton, Town of Riverview, Ville of Dieppe, CBDC, ACOA, 3+ Corporation, Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton, the Greater Shediac Chamber of Commerce. And the next meeting is scheduled for November 28th. Staff were pleased to participate in 2 of Mount Allison University classes over the month. They were welcome to Rosemary Poligato's Arts and Culture Marketing class. They came to Town Hall on October 16th for a discussion on public art, and staff also joined Dr. Mike Fox's Local Adaptation to Climate Change class on October 19th. They took a bus tour of Sackvill, where the class visited a variety of areas that are vulnerable to climate change. It was a busy month for communications, where staff utilized the Sentinel Emergency Alert System along with other communication tools on October 22nd and 23rd following the gas line break at the corner of Union and Main. And staff were also busy with a variety of communications during the heavy rains and winds on November 3rd and 4th, which resulted in several road closures. Staff were fortunate to attend the 13th Annual Municipal Communications Conference in Toronto on November 5th to 7th. The conference featured presentations on a variety of topics, including political communications in a crisis, using internal communications to support corporate culture, enhancing citizen engagement with digital platforms, using infographics, building the case for infrastructure funding, navigating privacy, analytics and digital marketing, corporate style guides, as well as others. This is the third time the town has been represented at the conference, which has grown considerably from year to year, and it was an extremely valuable conference, and staff appreciates the opportunity to support and attend. As discussed during the November 5th special council meeting, there's a new Investing in Canada infrastructure plan, which will be delivered through bilateral agreements with provinces and territories under 4 streams: green infrastructure, community culture and recreation, public transit, and northern and rural communities. The 2017 budget for New Brunswick is $673 million, and it will be distributed over 10 years. So the green infrastructure stream appears to be the appropriate fit for the town, given the large capital projects that have been identified and discussed to date, such as another phase of our Lawrence Street Stormwater Mitigation Project and our future Crescent Street Sewage Lagoon Project. So to ensure that we can apply, it is essential that a priority project be identified and that staff have clear direction from council to proceed with the submission. The next call for proposals is anticipated for late fall of this year, but until the call is issued and we have a clear direction on the submission requirements, like particular wording of a necessary motion, we will wait to advance a necessary motion on that. And that is my report.
Any questions on the report? Councillor Finney, please.
I was just wondering who attended the Atlantic Planners Institute Conference in Moncton?
Mr. Burke, that was you, right?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Finney. That would be me.
And who attended the Annual Municipal Communications Conference in Toronto?
That would also be me.
Okay. Councillor Black?
I just had a comment. I heard from a lot of people in town during the gas main break that the Sentinel program was just fantastic. The messaging system was getting through very, very well. So I'm being somewhat hypocritical because I'm not signed up for it yet, but I realized. But just to put the word out that as many people in town should sign up to the program. It's just a great way for the town to communicate any sort of EMO related or emergency problems in the town. So,
and is
Yes.
that information on our website, how to sign up to Sentinel? It is? Okay, thank you. Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Your Worship. Jamie, we had talked about changing the number so that when Sentinel goes out to the telephones who have caller ID, it will actually show that it's Sentinel calling.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tower. I guess the nice thing about an event such as this is that we were fortunate to learn a lot, especially the way we use our Sentinel emergency response system. And one of the feedback, one point of feedback that we received from the general public was that when the calls are coming in, it's a 1-800 number. Oftentimes, particularly happened on my phone, that it's a different 1-800 number or unknown number to some people, and ideally, we'd like that to be branded in some way so that the number coming in clearly identifies as a Town of Sackville Emergency Public Alert System. And the same would go for text messaging, email communications. All of that standard messaging should be the same, so that when somebody picks up their phone, they know it's not a telemarketer. They know it's potentially for an emergency and they need to check the message. So we're following up with Sentinel at their head office in Bathurst. It is fortunately a New Brunswick company. So we have a series of items that Craig and I have developed, which we're going to be following up with the company on.
Very good. Thank you, James.
Any other questions? None, thank you. Councillor Butcher, we have no new business. Anybody has that? No? So we move to question period, press.
I'm wondering first if the town has heard anything from Burger King, whether there's a proposal there for a drive-through or a Burger King outlet.
Councillor Tower, you raised it.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have not spoken to Burger King. I only know that they've been lining up and holding interviews for employees, so the exact time I have no idea about. Lori may have something, but I'll leave her to the rest.
Ms. Bickford, do you have anything formal, any application, or?
There is a building permit that has been applied for and issued for renovations for interior work.
And so that they will then have the right to have a drive-through there.
Provided they're operating the same drive-through that's in place, yes.
I need clarification on something the mayor said during the last meeting. The mayor said that the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment, added $2 million to the cost of the Lawrence Street project. I'm wondering, that's a new figure to me, how that worked through. What $2 million was it? What was the cost of that?
Sure. Mr. Acton, we want to get the detail on that?
Yeah, I'm unaware of the 2 million, but I can explain, you know, some of the additions that the EIA added. We had to get an easement out at the provincially significant wetland that we had to apply for through the province in order for the abattoir to be built. The EIA required us to have an archaeologist on site if we were going to proceed ahead with the abattoir out there, so that would have been a cost, or would be a cost if we were to proceed with the abattoir at some point down the road. So there is costs associated with that. There were wetland bird inventories that needed to happen and need to happen for the next 5 years. That was all part of the EIA process that will continue in the future. And I don't have all the information, but there were a few other additional items that needed to be done on an annual basis in order to meet all of the EIA requirements.
And has that work been done?
And I'll just add to that, because there was also a change in the structure of the dike itself, so that it came back from the review being much larger and much higher, which changed the whole structure of that dike plus the cost. And there were change in orders in which the muds and plants of that area would have to be salvaged, saved, and brought back to top up in some of the excavated areas. So there's a significant change in the construction elements, was a large part of the costs.
So as I understand it, you are still planning to go that route if you get the money. So have all those costs now been paid, or is this a bill for environmental impact assessment that will still come due?
Oh, we have paid some of the ones that Mr. Acton has spoken of, but we have not built the abattoir, and we have not built the ditches and the ponds. So those would have to be part of the full project. So no, those have not been paid. But I think the point was made that there was a difference between what we expected the cost to be, and after the EIA, there was a significant difference in practices and other related events that raised the cost significantly. And we've made that point with the province. Why? Because they've also made that point, being part of the next infrastructure funds, that if any review process adds costs, the recipients will be responsible for them, which we just think is unfair, that the senior governments run those reviews and then want to pass that cost on to the municipality.
Okay. I noticed that in the latest plan for Phase 2, the quarry retention part of it has been eliminated in the last tender package. Why is that?
Who would like to? Mr. Acton or Mr. Burke? Who would you like to speak?
I can take care of that. The work at the quarry was one is summer work. Two, the town is going to need to touch base with the CWWF in regards to a proposed change in the scope of the project, and those are some items that need to be taken care of. Make sure that the CWWF would allow those changes, and then proceed with the tender for that, which would be a construction, would be summer construction project anyways, versus the winter construction on the current phase that's out. So that is something that the consultant and the town are continuing to work on, and will be in further discussions with the CWWF in the scope change.
And CWWF is?
The funding partners that we got the funding approval for, and can't make any changes to the scope of the project without their authorization. And that's where the funding comes from, so they need to approve any of those changes.
So the quarry project, like the project to go across the industrial park, is still in play. It's just that it's not part of this latest tender package.
That is correct.
Mr. Work, you were seeking the acronym, is that what you were looking for?
I wondered about that too.
CW, what does that stand for?
Sorry, it's the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund. Sorry. Which
Now-
is sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the plans, and I'm wondering what the purpose is of the smaller pond that is at Dufferin and Lorne, in that area where there are 4 trees that the town planted, and you'll have to remove those trees and put a smaller pond there. I'm wondering what that retention pond is for.
It's going to serve a couple of purposes, but there's a fair amount of water that comes down Dufferin Street, so it's going to be an additional catchment area to store water there. Plus, it's also going to be an overflow area, if need be, from the main retention pond. Some additional capacity will be utilized in this retention pond, and yes, the trees will just be moved back closer to the current asphalt, so they will be salvaged.
2 more questions. Have there been any discussions with DTI regarding what happens to the water after it crosses Crescent Street?
There hasn't been any as of late. We did have a meeting with DTI probably at least a month ago or more, just in regards to find out what their position was in the dikes and the abados in our area, but no recent meetings.
And finally, I'm puzzled by the walkway by the sewage lagoon. It was referred to earlier. Apparently there's a construction of a walkway with some ditching there that is part of this tender package. I'm not sure what that is for. It's on the overview of the, where it shows the areas to be worked on.
As indicated earlier on in the meeting, that is a service road that was required as part of the agreement between Russell Metal and the town to acquire the property necessary for the original project.
So it's not a trail or anything like that, or walkway?
No, it's a service road.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the floor? Hearing none? Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Finney. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.